Hey y'all. Well, I get a lot of questions about my fingers. People want to know what happened to your fingers. Well, they don't let me use the blender anymore since I went fishing for my ring without turning the blender off. I'm no longer allowed to use the hand mixer at home. Thank goodness I wasn't going to lick the batter. You've seen those infomercials about the scissors that will cut anything? Turns out they are serious. So sometimes I give really silly answers of the question, what happened to my fingers? The truth is, 5 years ago today, October the 9th, 2013, I had my first finger amputation. I have lupus and severe Raynauds. My Raynauds does not respond to medications, and my fingers just die and have to be amputated. In September of 2013, this finger right here started just going numb and tingling, and I was trying to go to sleep one night when it first started, and the finger was just tingling and hurting, like it was a throbbing pain but tingling but yet numb. It's very hard to explain. I was trying to go to sleep because I had to get up early the next morning to go somewhere with my kids. So it was annoying. I wanted to just stop so I could go to sleep. It finally eased up and I slept. The next morning I got up and the finger was a little bit had a bluish tint to it. And the pad of the finger felt numb. And the finger also looked like it had been in water. It was kind of pruned up a little bit. So I didn't know what that was about, but I went on about my day, and that was a Saturday, and then we had Sunday, and Monday I went to a doctor to see what was going on with my finger. He didn't have a clue. He did put me on a high dose of blood pressure medicine to open up blood vessels so that blood could flow. He said that it would get better, that not to worry about it, it would get better. And then I was kind of like, well, if it don't get better? And he said, I don't know. I don't even know who to send you to if it don't get better. So it did not get better. And I made an appointment with my rheumatologist. But the appointment was for November. That was the soonest they could see me. And this was in September. And I just didn't know how I was going to get in to see the rheumatologist any sooner. But, so time went on. The finger was hurting like crazy, getting darker and darker to the point that it was pretty black. And the finger had just come like really hard, like it was like a hard shell on it. And it was just black and very, very painful. I mean, at night I couldn't sleep because the nerves in there were dying, and it was just jittery and jumpy and just hurt like crazy. And then one day in early October, a nurse from the hospital had called to ask me a question unrelated to my finger. And I said, hey, I need to see my doctor because my finger's turning black. And he was like, well, let me go talk to him and I'll call you back. So he went and talked to the doctor, and he called me back and said that he wanted to see me Monday morning at the oncology department because that's the department he would be working in that day. And so when Monday rolled around, I went to see him. And he was just in shock, like he could not believe my finger, which, you know, I was in shock too. I couldn't believe it. My blood pressure was super high, which of course it was high because the finger was hurting really, really bad. I mean, it was just in so much pain at that time. So he admitted me to the hospital, and then a parade of doctors came through to see my finger. So everybody from the hospital came in to see the finger. So after, you know, many doctors had came in, they said, okay, well, Dr. Taylor is going to come see you. And I kind of perked up and asked, what Dr. Taylor was that, and come to find out it was the orthopedic doctor that had done surgery on my husband and saw both of my children at some point. So he was familiar to me, even though he didn't know me. I was familiar with him, and I was just kind of felt better knowing that someone that I trusted was going to look at my finger. He came in and looked at the finger, and he's very blunt. A lot of people don't like him because he's very blunt and to the point, and he doesn't sugarcoat anything. And that's one thing that I do like about him. So he came in and looked at the finger and said, we're going to have to cut that off. Well, I knew in the back of my mind that I was going to lose the finger, but for someone just to say it out loud was a little shocking. So, he scheduled the surgery. But at that point, I had not told anyone about my finger. Like my sister didn't even know about my finger. People who had been around me in the homeschool group and went to field trips and stuff with us, they knew I was having trouble with my finger, but my friends didn't know about my finger. And here I was supposed to have it cut off the next morning, so I felt like I needed to let people know that I'm having my finger cut off, and I'm a little bit crazy anyway, so I needed a way to tell people I was getting my finger cut off without being such a sad, sappy story. You know, like poor pitiful me's having my finger cut off. I didn't want that. And so I got on Facebook and I made a post, and this is what it read. So I wanted to go on vacation at a 5-star hotel, but I found out it was going to cost me an arm and a leg. So I asked, where can I go for just a finger? So I'm at Conway Hospital, and they're removing my finger in the morning. So that was my way of letting my friends know that I was having a finger amputated. So they did cut my finger off the next morning, and it hurt like crazy. There's no way to even act like it didn't, because it did. It hurt so bad. And my whole hand was wrapped up in a bandage, and so they was giving me pain medicine. I was scared because I didn't know what my hand was going to look like. I didn't know how it was going to affect my daily life. And so it was very scary. And I got out of the hospital, and I just remember being scared. But as I went back to the hospital the next week, and they unwrapped my hand, and it didn't look so bad. I mean, my hand was like grossly swollen, but where I was missing that finger, it was all real poofy, and it looked really weird. It looked super weird, and I was like, oh my god, that's so ugly. But as the swelling went down and the stitches healed up, and they removed the stitches, like, I guess the next week, it just became normal, and I went on about my daily life. At that time, I painted a lot, and so I just went back to painting and creating art and carried on with life. A few months down the road, I think about in April, I believe it was, this finger started doing the same thing. And so when it first started up, it scared me. I knew it felt like the same thing happening to that finger. So I went to my doctor, and they put me in the hospital. I was in and out of the hospital for a good month there. Just running tests, trying different medications, all kinds of things. You know, they did every scan, ultrasound, dye test, anything they could to find out about my blood vessels, what was happening with, you know, the blood flowing and stuff. And I was on high doses of all kinds of medications, blood thinners, And eventually they even inserted Botox into the finger, hoping that would relax the blood vessels and let the blood flow. Nothing they tried helped. They were even doing nitro paste on it, and all that did was just give me a bad headache and burn the skin off my hurting, throbbing, dying finger. And I was on pain medications a lot. Around the clock, every 2 hours, I was on pain medications. Eventually, they transported me to another hospital who ran all the tests again. So I was in there for a week with them running tests. And then in the end, the team of doctors came in and said, well, there's nothing we can do for your finger. You're going to have it amputated, and asked what surgeon I wanted. So I told him the same surgeon who had done my other fingers. So they scheduled the surgery, and he came over, like, I think the next day, and amputated the finger. So, got over that. It was a few months later, this finger started doing the same thing. And they put me in ICU on some medications that I needed to be monitored closely on. Just trying, something new. The nitro paste and all kinds of medications, all kinds of testing. I spent a week in ICU with no change. So they said, we'll have to amputate the finger. I knew that. So then they moved me to a regular room after they took me off all the dangerous medications. And I had to wait a few days for my blood to get back to the right numbers since I was on so much blood thinners before I could have surgery. And then I had the surgery, and the next day or so I went home. So at that time, I had the 3 fingers. They put me on Viagra because it's a vasodilator, and hoping that it would help. But just a couple months later, like not very long at all, this finger started acting up. And by that time, I just really didn't want to go in the hospital and do all the testing again. So I was just ready to just cut it off. I mean, that's what it's going to come down to. Why go through all the pain of letting the finger die and all that? But of course, doctors didn't really agree with that, so they drug it out a little bit, but not too bad on that finger. So eventually, that finger had to be cut off. And then shortly after that, I got back on the blood thinners right away, and I was having to go to the hospital every morning to have my blood checked. And what had happened was I was sitting there waiting to go in to have my blood checked, get the numbers and stuff because of the blood thinners, to see if they needed to raise it or lower the blood thinners. And while I was waiting, these 3 fingers turned dark purple. This one and the one that's missing here and that one just turned dark purple. And so when they finally called my name in, I went in and I just held my hand up, and I mean, like, just 30 minutes before, it was normal color, and I walked in there and it was just dark purple. There was a doctor came in there, and he really scared me. not just about losing a finger. He was talking about you're going to lose your whole hand. It was just very scary. So immediately they admitted me into the hospital and started all kinds of medications, you know, the nitro paste, which never helped any of the fingers, but, you know, let's try it again. And high doses of Viagra, and they ended up transporting me out of town to a hospital 2.5 hours away. And while there, they did lots of testing, put me on new medications, and the color in my fingers did come back, but it left the whole hand just numb. Like those fingers, the palm of my hand is, all that's just numb, and it still is today. Like it was such nerve damage. All this is numb here. It was such nerve damage that never came back. So I think I was in the hospital at that time for about a week, and I seemed to get stabilized, so I was released from the hospital and came home. And then I did not lose another finger for 2 years, and so I thought, okay, this is gone, I'm fine, I'm not going to lose any more fingers. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, that finger just started turning, started doing weird things that I recognized, because it had happened 4 times before. So I went on to the ER pretty early in and told him, you know, that what was going on with my finger, and he didn't think I knew what I was talking about. So he just kind of cut down along my nail and put a bunch of antibiotics in there and a wick, and he said it was going to be fine. Well, it wasn't. And so I got an appointment to see my rheumatologist, and for some reason he wanted to drag it out for several months. So we did, and I was on high doses of Viagra, which was not fun. It made me very lightheaded, dizzy, and weak feeling. My shoulders were just weak. My arms were so weak I couldn't lift them very well. And I just felt horrible, and it was because of the high doses of the Viagra. We drugged that out for a good 2 months, maybe even longer than 2 months, I don't know. The whole time the finger's just getting darker and dying, and the nerves are just going crazy and hurting like crazy in there. So he finally agreed, you know, you're going to have to see the surgery team. So they sent me to the surgery team, and they said, okay, well, you'll have to see Dr. Taylor. So it was about another 2 weeks before I got an appointment to see Dr. Taylor. And so I went in and saw him, and he looked at it and said, well, I hate to cut another finger off. And I'm like, well, I bet I hate it worse than you do. But he had a cancellation, so he was able to schedule the surgery for the next day, which was very surprising. So I went in and had that finger cut off. So it's been a year since I've had my last finger cut off. My other fingers seem to be doing well. I do have this finger that I keep an eye on. See that little red dot? It started out as a little bitty speck several years back, and the little speck has just gotten larger, so I do keep an eye on that finger. This hand is numb. I mean, this thumb is not, but all this and the side of my hand and the whole bit of my hand is all completely numb. I can move them, but they're just numb. And I drop things, like carrying things, I try not to, you know, if I'm not at home especially, I try not to carry anything with this hand, because I don't want to drop it out in public, such as a plate of food or glass and stuff like that. And this hand is doing well. I just have the pinky and the thumb. it's doing well. I function with that. When I wake up in the mornings, both hands are completely numb. I can't even hold my phone without dropping it because the hands are just so numb. It's just like I can't do anything with them. It takes a little while for my hands to wake up enough, for this one to wake up enough that I can, you know, function and go on about my business. And I do well with missing the fingers. I mean, there's a lot of things that I can't do. Thankfully, I have a wonderful husband and 2 great kids that don't mind helping me do things. I hate to ask them, but yet, you know, I have to. So they don't mind it. Or at least they act like they don't. But there's things I still can do. You know, I enjoy knitting. That gives me something to do. So with the lupus and the health issues that I have, my active life come to a screeching halt. And so I'm at home. Thankfully, I do have knitting, and that, you know, gives my mind something to do, because it is hard not being able to do the things that I used to do. But, you know, I'm good. I, you know, don't want anyone to feel sorry for me because I'm doing what I love, which is knitting. And, you know, I don't question, like, why did this happen to me? Things just happen. I know that. And if something weird is going to happen to someone, it's going to happen to me. Well, thanks for clicking on this today and hearing the story about what happened to my fingers. As I said at the beginning of the video, today when I realized that it was 5 years since my first finger amputation, I felt like I needed to do a video. Because I still, you know, get asked all the time, what happened to your fingers? And, you know, like I said, I give silly answers half the time. Sometimes when I'm in town or if I'm around friends or such and something happens to their finger, I say, oh, that's the same thing that happened to my finger. You're going to lose that finger. One day I was in Lowe's and the guy that was helping me had a Band-Aid around his finger, and I say, oh, what happened to your finger? And he had hurt it, like smashed it. And I said, that's the same thing that happened to my finger. And he just looked at me really weird. But, you know, you gotta have fun in life. I could sit around and cry, but who wants to do that? May as well make a joke of it and enjoy life. So, thanks for hanging out with me today. See you soon.